You see, we live in a time where noise is mistaken for progress, where announcements replace achievements, and silence is seen as a void rather than a vessel. But silence, real, intentional silence, is not emptiness. It's presence, it's awareness, it's control. There's a reason why the most grounded people you'll ever meet are the ones who speak the least and observe the most. In silence, they refine. In silence, they sharpen. Because silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of self. When you strip away the distractions, the constant ping of validation, the scrolling, the subtle pressure to prove, what you're left with is a mirror. Just you, your ambition, your discipline, and your fears. That moment can feel uncomfortable, but that's exactly where transformation begins. Most people avoid silence not because it's boring, but because it confronts them with truth. And truth, especially the kind that's been buried, doesn't whisper. It demands attention. Working in silence means choosing substance over spectacle. It means understanding that the world doesn't need to know your every move. That validation from others is a currency that depreciates quickly. The more you seek it, the more it owns you. But when you remove the need for external applause, something incredible happens. Your work becomes purer. Your drive becomes internal. You stop performing and start progressing. Psychologically, this is liberation, because the pressure to be seen, to be recognized, to be liked, that's a heavy load to carry. It skews your intentions, redirects your energy, and disconnects you from the process. And it's the process, not the recognition, that changes you. That sculpts your mind. That teaches you how to endure, adapt, and thrive. Silence is where that alchemy takes place. Philosophically, it echoes an old truth. The deepest rivers run the most still. Think of all the most profound breakthroughs, personal or global. They didn't emerge from noise. They came from solitude, introspection, and deep, focused effort. Greatness doesn't announce itself while it's forming. It works quietly. It listens, it learns, and when it finally arrives, it's undeniable. But here's the challenge and the opportunity. Can you resist the urge to be seen while you're becoming? Can you delay recognition in favor of depth? Because mastery isn't built in the spotlight. It's forged in the shadows. In early mornings, in late nights, in the moments when no one is clapping, but you show up anyway. That's where the edge is created. That's where silence becomes a weapon. So don't be afraid to disappear for a while. Don't be afraid to mute the world and tune into your own voice. The quieter you become, the more you'll hear, the more you'll understand where you're truly meant to go and who you're truly meant to be. Silence won't just protect your path, it will define it. Asterisk, asterisk, be still long enough, and you'll hear the sound of your own becoming. Asterisk, asterisk, discipline is not loud. It doesn't parade itself around or seek recognition. It doesn't need to. Real discipline operates behind closed doors, without applause, without an audience, and without the dopamine rush of external validation. It's built in quiet hours when nobody's watching, when no one's posting about it, when no one even knows what you're doing. That's where your edge is formed, in the unseen, the unnoticed, the uncelebrated. There's a growing addiction to performance in our culture. Not performance as in doing the work, but performance as in staging it. Curating the journey, documenting every effort to prove that effort is being made. But that isn't growth, that's theater. The more you work to be seen working, the less energy you reserve for the actual work. And over time, the gap between who you seem to be and who you are widens. That's where burnout begins. Not just physical exhaustion, but psychological dissonance. You start feeling unfulfilled, even when it looks like you're doing everything right. That's why discipline must come before display, because if you rely on public attention to stay consistent, your progress is at the mercy of something you can't control. Trends change, people lose interest. Algorithms shift, but discipline, when it's internal, when it's yours, is impervious to those fluctuations. It becomes a system, a rhythm, something you return to not because you're being watched, but because it defines who you are. There's a certain power that comes from doing hard things when no one's clapping, a kind of quiet authority that builds in those moments of solitude. You develop self-trust, and that is one of the most valuable currencies a person can possess. When you know you can rely on yourself to show up, to push through resistance, to choose long-term gain over short-term pleasure, you become unshakable. You're no longer chasing motivation, you're anchored in principle. Psychologically, this is where identity meets action. You're not just someone who wants to be disciplined, you are disciplined. You begin to identify as the kind of person who does the work regardless of reward. That shift in self-concept is subtle, but it's transformational, because the moment you start acting in alignment with your highest values consistently, regardless of who's watching, you step into integrity. And integrity is the foundation of greatness. Philosophically, it speaks to a deeper truth. Form precedes recognition. The roots of a tree grow deep before the branches ever stretch toward the sky. The structure of a building is laid long before the walls rise. Likewise, your character must be built before your work can carry any real weight. Discipline is that foundation, steady, unseen, but essential. So, stop seeking the stage before you've mastered the craft. Stop chasing credit before you've earned conviction. Build first, show later if ever, because the most valuable things in life are not proven through performance. They are proven through persistence. Let your consistency become your character, and let your results be the only proof you ever need. Comparison is one of the most subtle yet destructive forms of distraction. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always feel toxic at first. Sometimes it even disguises itself as motivation, a benchmark, a reference point. But make no mistake, when left unchecked, comparison corrodes your clarity. It draws your eyes away from your own path and locks them onto someone else's pace, someone else's process, someone else's narrative. And the moment you start measuring your worth against their timeline, you lose sight of your own. What makes comparison so dangerous is that it's rarely a full picture. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You see their results, but not their sacrifices. You see their wins, but not the quiet breakdowns. You see the curated image, not the complexity behind it. And yet, the mind latches onto these fragments as if they're complete truths. That's where insecurity takes root, not from what's real, but from what's assumed. Psychologically, comparison shifts you from process-oriented thinking to outcome-oriented anxiety. It fuels urgency, not purpose. It creates this internal pressure to catch up, even when you're not behind. It makes you chase things not because they align with your values, but because someone else has them. And before you realize it, you're no longer building your life, you're reacting to someone else's. This is where personal focus becomes essential. Focus is more than attention, it's a filter. It's what you choose to let into your mental space, and more importantly, what you choose to keep out. When you focus on yourself, you start to recognize what actually matters to you, what makes you come alive, what aligns with your principles, what challenges you to grow without compromising your peace. That clarity only comes when you're willing to stop looking outward long enough to actually listen inward. Philosophically, there's a profound liberation in embracing your own pace. Not everyone is meant to bloom at the same time, in the same way, or under the same conditions. There's nothing noble about rushing towards someone else's definition of success. In fact, it's a betrayal of your own design. True progress is not linear, and it's certainly not universal. It's deeply individual. Some people are meant to sprint, others are meant to endure, and you're meant to find the rhythm that allows you to become the most honest version of yourself. Here's the truth: the more you compare, the more you dilute your own potential. Because instead of cultivating it, you're constantly questioning it. Instead of refining it, you're reshaping it to fit someone else's mold. And the tragedy of that is, the world doesn't need a slightly altered version of someone else, it needs an unfiltered version of you. So focus inward, nurture your vision, honor your progress even when it's slow, even when it's quiet, especially then, because when you stop watching everyone else, you finally start seeing yourself. ***, don't let borrowed metrics define your value, create your own, and measure deeply. ***, there's a certain elegance in letting your results speak for you. In a world driven by announcement, hype, and constant self-promotion, restraint is a rarity and a power move. We've been conditioned to believe that visibility equals value, that if it isn't seen, it doesn't count. But the truth is, real work, the kind that changes things, rarely asks for attention. It doesn't need to explain itself. It just arrives, undeniable. There's a psychological depth to this idea. When you're focused on proving your worth, you're constantly narrating your efforts to others, hoping they'll notice, approve, applaud. But when you trust the process and know your work holds weight, you don't feel the need to keep explaining yourself. You stop auditioning for recognition and start building something solid, something rooted in quiet confidence. This isn't about arrogance. It's about understanding that impact doesn't require a microphone. It requires intention, clarity, precision, the kind of focus that's only possible when you're not distracted by performance. You shift from trying to be impressive to actually becoming impressive, not just to others, but to yourself. That's a different kind of validation. It's internal, it's lasting. And when the results come, because they will come if the effort is real and the commitment is relentless, they carry authority. Not because you talked about them endlessly, but because they can't be ignored. There's a difference between being loud and being undeniable. One demands attention, the other commands respect. Philosophically, this taps into the idea of virtue over vanity. Ancient thinkers spoke of arid, the pursuit of excellence for its own sake. Not for praise, not for applause, but because excellence is the reward, and when you live by that standard, your work becomes sacred. Every hour spent refining your craft, every decision made in alignment with your values, these things accumulate. Quietly, powerfully, until the results make the noise you no longer need to. And here's something people forget. When you work in silence, you gain space to listen not just to your inner voice, but to the feedback the world offers when you're not trying to control the narrative. You become a student again, and that humility, that openness to learn and adapt is often what leads to the breakthroughs everyone else will eventually see. But by then, you won't need to say anything. You won't need to convince anyone, because the result, whether it's mastery, progress, peace, or success will speak a language louder than any post, pitch, or proclamation. So resist the urge to broadcast everything. Hold something sacred. Let the silence do its work. Let the results arrive on their own terms, without preamble, without expectation. There's a timeless strength in becoming so good that no one can overlook you, not because you shouted, but because you showed up again and again until your work could speak for itself. Asterisk, asterisk, let your legacy be written not by words, but by the undeniable echo of what you've built. Asterisk, asterisk, energy is finite. That's not just a biological reality, it's a psychological truth. Every thought you think, every person you engage with, every environment you step into, takes something from you. And in a world that constantly demands your attention, your energy is quietly siphoned away, not in dramatic crashes, but in subtle leaks. One conversation too many, one obligation too far, one distraction too often. Before you know it, your clarity is fogged, your purpose diluted, and your focus fractured. This is why protecting your energy is not selfish, it's strategic. It's the foundation of sustainability. Because you can't do deep work, you can't evolve, and you certainly can't focus on yourself if your internal resources are constantly being outsourced to things and people that don't nourish your direction. Psychologically, your energy is your decision-making currency. When you're depleted, you're not just tired, you're compromised. You start reacting instead of responding. You say yes to things that don't serve you. You move with urgency instead of intention. That's when you start living someone else's script, accepting distractions as duties and mistaking motion for meaning. And the deeper tragedy, most people don't even realize it's happening. They call it being busy, when in truth they're just scattered. That's why boundaries are essential, not emotional walls, but conscious choices. Choices about who gets access to you, about what environments you allow into your headspace, about what conversations are worth having, and which ones are just noise wrapped in urgency. Boundaries are the structure that protects your momentum. They're the filter through which you preserve your focus and amplify your impact. Philosophically, this returns to a very old idea that your attention is your life. What you give time and energy to becomes part of your identity. You are shaped not just by what you do, but by what you allow. And when you allow chaos, when you constantly expose yourself to drama, distraction, or digital overload, you become a passive participant in your own becoming. Protecting your energy also means learning to be selective with your presence. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table. Not every conversation deserves your reaction. Maturity is knowing that silence is an answer, and absence is a response. You don't need to explain your boundaries to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. Protecting your peace is not up for debate, it's a prerequisite for progress. There's a kind of calm that comes when you're no longer accessible to everything, when your mind isn't pulled in 1,000 directions. When your emotions aren't at the mercy of external fluctuations, in that stillness your priorities sharpen, your values become louder, your path becomes clearer. You don't just move forward, you move with precision. So aud it your energy like you would your time. Be deliberate, be discerning, because what you allow is what will grow, and what you protect is what will last. Asterisk, asterisk, guard your energy like it's sacred, because it is the fuel of who you're becoming. Asterisk, asterisk, growth is rarely glamorous at the beginning. It doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence, with repetition, with solitude, with long stretches of time where nothing seems to be happening, and yet everything is. You're building quietly. And that quiet season, that's where your future is forged. We're conditioned to want quick visibility, to be noticed early, praised often, and validated externally, but anything of real value takes time to form. The most powerful transformations happen in obscurity. Like seeds buried beneath soil, growth begins in the dark, hidden, protected, unseen. That early stage isn't a detour, it's the design. It's where depth is cultivated, where resilience is tested, and where identity is shaped without interference. Psychologically, there's immense strength in the willingness to remain unseen while you improve. It means you're prioritizing substance over spectacle. You're not building to impress, you're building to endure. Most people want the rewards of mastery without the patience it demands. But mastery is the result of thousands of silent decisions. Waking up early, staying late, starting again, choosing discipline over distraction, every single day. That's the work no one claps for, but it's the only work that truly changes you. There's something grounding about doing the work in silence. It creates a relationship between you and the process that no one else can touch. No audience, no critics, just you, your effort, and the slow, steady unfolding of your potential. And when you do that long enough, when you stay committed to building without needing to broadcast, something powerful happens. You emerge. And when you do, it's not with noise. It's with presence. You won't have to announce it. People will feel it. That's the paradox. The more you work in private, the more undeniable your presence becomes in public. Not because you forced your way into the spotlight, but because you earned the kind of results that speak in a language louder than performance, the language of proof. Philosophically, it mirrors nature. Look at the way mountains rise, slowly, quietly, over centuries, not because they were trying to be noticed, but because the elements shaped them with pressure and time. Real greatness doesn't rush. It doesn't chase applause. It doesn't need constant exposure to evolve. It just grows with intention, with weight, and with grace. So don't be discouraged if your efforts aren't being noticed right now. Don't mistake quiet progress for stagnation. That season of invisibility you're in, that's where the real foundation is being poured. Stay consistent, stay focused. Let your silence be filled with action, not explanation. Because when the moment comes, and it will, you won't have to demand attention. You'll arrive with the kind of quiet strength that can't be ignored, not because you were loud, but because you were real. Build quietly, emerge unmistakably. That's how you become a force, not just a voice.